Hey Caitlin, this is Mrs. Hoven. Just wanted to check on the function combination ones. I think their explanation is a little complicated too. So I just want to make sure that you're okay. I just wrote an example here to make sure you'd be all right. If f of x, for example, is x squared, and g of x is 4x plus 8, and you're supposed to graph f plus g, you're basically just making a new equation that is the f equation plus the g equation, which feel free to either make a table, plug in a bunch of x values to figure out what it looks like, or go to your calculator, go to y1 and simply type in x squared plus 4x plus 8, and then you can graph it. If you feel like you're not seeing enough, like I don't think I'm seeing much of the u because I know it should be a parabola because it's x squared, I can just change my viewing window. I tend to like number 6. I hit zoom and then Z standard. Makes it go 10 in each direction, and then I can see it to match up the graphs. I do worry sometimes when it's a subtraction one, because the f of x function was x squared, and you have to subtract the entire g function. So when you have to subtract a quantity, it must be in parentheses. And then you distribute the negative sign before you would either make your table or go to your calculator. If it's f times g, it's the same idea. F of x is x squared. The g is 4x plus 8. You may put that in y1, or you could distribute it first and get 4x cubed plus 8x squared before you type it in here. If it's written like this, as a fraction, they simply want you to divide it. So just on your calculator, you could divide x squared by 4x plus 8 and see what it looks like on your calculator. I do want to make sure that you would be okay on a few things. If you do have to graph a log, if it is base 10, that's super easy for your calculator. Just y equals, or y1, you can just type log and the x in parentheses. You don't have to put the little 10 down here because that is the assumed base, the default. If nothing's there, we assume it's 10. So if you graph that, you could see what it would look like. If you can see here, it's awful small. I'm having a hard time seeing it. So I can always hit the window button and maybe not have it go up quite as high. Maybe have it only go up to 5 and as low as -5 and look at the graph. Looks a little better there. If you do have to graph one with a different base here instead of 10, like for example, this is log base 3 of x, y equals, going to clear that out. I'm going to hit math, scroll down until you see log base. And then you can input in the base of 3 and the argument, which is still x, and graph that one. Looks a little bit different. If you have to graph something with an e, if you have forgotten from last year, e is the inverse of natural log, which is the ln button. So right above that's e to the x. So if I wanted to graph e to the negative x, I would hit second natural log and make sure I put the exponent as negative x. And then I can get a good look at it. So these are some trickier ones to graph. And I would feel remiss if I didn't make sure you knew how to do it with a table. If you were told to, let's say this is f of x and this is g of x, and you were supposed to graph f minus g. So here's f of x minus g of x, which is just x. I think it's a good idea if you're able to substitute into an equation, make sure you do negatives. I generally plug in 0 if I can and some positives. So this would be 2 to the negative second power minus a negative 2. 2 to the negative second power is 1 over 2 squared, or 1/4, plus 2, which gives me 2 1/4. I could plug in -1 for these, and I'd get 2 to the negative first power minus a -1, which would be 1/2 plus 1, which is 1.5. I could plug in a 0, 2 to the 0 power minus 0. Well, 2 to the 0 power, or pretty much anything to the 0 power, is 1. So 1 minus 0 is 1. Plug in a 1. 2 to the first minus 1, because I'm plugging a 1 in for both of these, is 2 minus 1, which is 1 again. Plug in a 2. 2 squared minus 2. 4 minus 2 is 2. I could plot those points. So when I do -2, I got 2 1/4. Kind of running into my stuff here, I'm sorry. -1, I got 1 1/2. At 0, I got 1. At 1, I also got 1. At 2, I got 4. So it's looking like it's making kind of this shape. And then you could check it on your calculator. So there you go. Thanks.